Hello and welcome to the Feck It Fun, Fabulous and Free Eating Disorder Recovery podcast. I'm Helly and I'm here to provide regular bursts of information and inspiration, some neuroscience applicable to eating disorder recovery, perhaps a few rants, but otherwise lots of positivity with a bit of a feck it attitude, some fun and a sprinkling of fabulousness to help everyone find freedom in recovery. Hi, welcome to the Feck It Fun, Fabulous and Free Eating Disorder Recovery podcast. My name's Helly. I'm an eating disorder recovery coach, working with people in recovery from eating disorders and disordered eating. Today's episode is about why it's really important to keep shaking it up in eating disorder recovery. Eating disorder recovery can become really exhausting after just a short period of time, as it takes up huge mental space in your brain. It's creating horrible physical side effects because you're having to eat a lot of food that you haven't eaten for so long. And it really does create a lot of distress and emotion and feelings which are really quite uncomfortable to have to live through and to live with. And because of all that, it can be very easy in eating disorder recovery to make some changes and then get a little bit complacent or a little bit lazy, perhaps, with making more changes in recovery terms. So let's just go into this in a bit more depth then. When you start out in eating disorder recovery, it can feel in those first few days, maybe that first week or two, it can feel exciting and exhilarating. You can feel really motivated. It can be fun. And a lot of people get that sort of initial honeymoon recovery period. Not everybody gets that honeymoon period, but a lot of people do, where you really, start to override the initial fear response, let yourself eat more again, let yourself start to eat some of those things you've been dreaming about eating for so long. You let yourself rest a bit more. And that recovery honeymoon period can feel incredible and can be a wonderful beginning to your recovery process. But very often, then what can happen is you've been through that honeymoon period. You've started to eat a lot more food again. You've started to make really big changes in your recovery process. And that is wonderful. That is to be celebrated. I'm not knocking that at all. But then what can happen is the eating disorder generated fear will creep back in, and it will become more sneaky in the way it creeps back in. And so suddenly you can do the things that you started to do at the beginning of your recovery. You can eat some of the things that you began to let yourself eat at the beginning of your recovery process. And because you are eating more and you are facing some of those things that were once so terrifying, and you're resting a bit more than you were, it's easy to find that you actually then get stuck in this new recovery space because you're not as bad as you once were. People around you aren't as worried as they once were. They can see you're eating more. They can see you're doing a bit better. You might find that your body is now consistently gaining a bit of weight and changing with the changes in terms of your eating and resting and breaking the other disordered behaviours that you've already made. And so you think, well, okay, I'm doing all right. I've made changes. My body's changing. This is recovery. And so you don't continue to push yourself harder. You don't keep identifying new fears that you haven't faced yet. And you just let yourself sort of almost plateau after a while in this new, better but not recovered space. And it's very easy to, I often think of eating disorder recovery a bit like climbing a mountain, if you like, where you make a big climb in terms of recovery. And you make quite a lot of changes, and that's wonderful. And then you get to a sort of a plateau and you think, okay, I'm just going to have a breather here for a little while. I'm going to celebrate the fact I've got this far. I'm going to look at the view that I've got at the moment. I'm going to have that little breather. And then you realise after a little while of stopping there, okay, shit, I've still got further to go. I haven't got as far as I need to be. I've still got all these fears that I haven't addressed yet. And that's where you need to shake it up again. You need to bring in all those fears again. You need to work out what you haven't faced yet in recovery, and you need to make another big push in your recovery journey. But to keep recovery moving forward so that you don't have long breaks and long breathers after a push into your recovery, it's really important to really constantly and consistently shake it up in recovery. So try not to get into that recovery rut where you're eating more, you're resting a bit more, you're gaining a bit of weight, but then realize that you're still stuck, but just with a slightly different disordered routine than the one you had before. Every day, multiple times a day, just reflect on your recovery and think of how can I shake up my recovery in this moment? What can I do right now that I've not done in recovery yet? How much more could I eat today? What situations could I face today that are still terrifying to me? What foods haven't I had yet that I'm still scared of? Make it a game every day to really shake it up. Keep identifying all the fears and all the things that you're avoiding, and get on and do it each and every day so that recovery doesn't become a drawn out, long, overwhelming and exhausting process. And so that, you're constantly still climbing that mountain to get yourself to the very top and get yourself to the recovered life that you ultimately want. Because nobody wants to be stuck in that quasi-recovery state for any length of time. You want to be at the top of the mountain. You want to be where life is the best, where you're free of the eating disorder, where you have no more eating disordered fears. That's where you want to be. So today I urge you, look around, work out where your fears are, shake it up in your eating disorder recovery, keep shaking it up, and you'll get to that recovered point a lot faster than you would otherwise. And hopefully you'll find a bit of fun and enjoyment along the way. So that's today's little episode. I hope that's been helpful. If you want me to talk about anything in particular on this podcast series, then please let me know by emailing me. And otherwise, I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Feck It Fun, Fabulous and Free Eating Disorder Recovery podcast. Don't forget, eating disorder recovery doesn't have to be boring and doesn't have to be serious. Now go and grab yourself some food and have a fabulous rest of the day.